This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to GSMC podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started here today, I want to make sure I remind you guys, as always, to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Make sure you never miss an episode. If you could please also give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. It would be very appreciated, very helpful. It allows us to see what you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways we can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we are on social media. So you can find us there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can discuss, we can debate. And the Lakers have given us a lot to talk about. As we discussed on the last episode, they were in the midst of a big 3-game stretch for them. Obviously, like I said, the first game of that stretch was the Sixers with no Embiid, no Simmons, and no Josh Richardson, so that was an easy win. As you saw Saturday night, they lost to basically the Warriors G League team, or at least they what could have been their G League team plus Andrew Wiggins from last year. So you see where the Sixers are at this moment, not exactly great. But yeah, so they had to play them, played the Bucks on Friday, then they played the Clippers today. I'm recording this Sunday night, so they played the Clippers on Sunday, and this was going, at least these 2 games against the Bucks. Technically the Clippers game is on the road, but it's still in LA, and it's never really going to be a true road game in LA. There's always going to be more than enough Lakers fans there to make it feel at least close to 50-50, if not more Lakers fans than Clippers fans. But so those were 2 big games for them. And also, like we talked about, those could, in people's minds, help tighten the gap between Giannis and LeBron for the MVP race. And it honestly might have. Granted, some of that may stem from the fact that Giannis had a minor issue with his knee, so he's going to be out for a couple of games, and we'll see if the Bucks drop games with him out, or if even how he plays when he gets back. But if you were a guy that was on the LeBron for MVP train, which I talked about in the last episode, I was still on the Giannis train just because I feel overall he's done more, but obviously there's still a month left in the season to play out, so the race isn't over. But if you were a guy that's on the LeBron side of things, this was a great weekend for you. You look at Friday, he clearly outplayed Giannis in that game. Let me just look up. I'm trying to remember the box scores. Obviously they won, but I'm trying to remember how much they won by. It was a comfortable margin, I thought. They won by 10. LeBron at 37. 8-8 to Giannis's 32, 11-6. And obviously, like I said in the episode, there's not a one-on-one game, so obviously there's more to it than just their individual stats against one another. But obviously it helps when you outplay them. But Giannis, he shot 10 for 21, which was all right. He was only 1 for 6 from 3, which was obviously the big change. Because I remember the first game, I think he had 5 threes. I thought that was the big thing that they dared him to shoot, and he was able to make them pay for it. And this time, obviously, he wasn't. He definitely struggled from the outside, but also as a team, the Lakers were just great defensively overall. They held the Bucks to 41% shooting, 28% from 3. Middleton didn't have a good game. He was 5 of 19, 2 attempts from 3. Bledsoe didn't really do anything. The only reason the game was honestly close was because of Dante DiVincenzo. He had 17 off the bench for the Bucks, and if, like I said, if he's had, because I think he averages close to like 9 or 10 points a game. Yeah, 9.3 points a game on the season. So if he had closer to his season average, then the Bucks lose by like 20. Like later, he was the only one keeping it really close because I mean, Giannis was doing what he could, but this game kind of showed me, and this isn't really the. We could honestly probably discuss this more so on a later day, maybe closer to the playoffs. But the issue with the Bucks is going to be one. I don't know how far you can go if Middleton and Bledsoe are your second and third, arguably best players. Obviously, Middleton's definitely probably there too, but Bledsoe's up in the air if he's a 3 or not. But it's like, how good can a team be with Chris Middleton being their second best player? Just because while he's good and like he's been an all-star, all that fun stuff, he's still a guy that, at least based on the playoffs last year, can be a little inconsistent. And that's going to be an issue when you are playing the same team 7 games in a 7-game series, to where like they know what you're doing, you're not catching anybody by surprise, you have time to game plan for you, all that stuff. Like that could be an issue for the Bucks, just because, like I said, how much you rely on guys like Middleton and Bledsoe, like Brook Lopez, Wes Matthews, Marvin Williams, who was inexplicably guarding Anthony Davis one-on-one in the post in that game. I don't know what Bud was doing with that. But yeah, how much can you count these guys to show up night in and night out for them? Because obviously Giannis is going to show up more or less. But then that kind of goes to my second point, which is that at the end of the game, when you're in a situation where you're like, all right, we just need a bucket, you could argue the Bucks don't have a guy that you can just like get the ball to, and you can know he's going to score 2 points every time. Because even when Giannis has the ball, if he's up at the top of the key, if you sag off him enough, you can cut off his driving lanes, and obviously he doesn't have the outside shot to make you pay consistently enough. Like he can hit threes, but not consistent enough. And also if he gets the ball in the post, his shot is not that good to where he's a reliable post guy, so he can be easy to double team because he's going to try to back you down and try to spin past you, or like he's going to try to drive to get to the layup or try to get fouled or something. Like he's not like Anthony Davis get the ball in the post, back you down, and like maybe turn out, or even like LeBron can back you down a little bit and then like turn around and shoot a jumper, and then I'm just always going to try to drive. And I know Giannis doesn't have that consistent jumper yet, so that's kind of why he may not do that all the time. Like I said, he's not honestly a guy that can just like get the ball in the wing and just like break you down one-on-one. It's not really his game yet, so it's like it's going to be hard to consistently, if the game's closer, it's tight, because they haven't had that many close, tight games. As we talked about, Giannis plays like 30 minutes a night, so they haven't needed him to be around in many fourth quarters this season. But when that time's going to come, and it's going to come in the playoffs, because obviously you're playing better teams game after game, it's going to be an issue. Just if you don't have a guy that, like, all right, we know, like the Lakers give the ball to LeBron, they feel like they have a good chance of scoring on that possession, no matter what it is, whether he gets the ball and he drives it, maybe not if he goes to the free throw line, because he's not shooting like under his 70%. So outside of that, but like he's going to drive, he's going to make it, he's going to shoot a jumper, he might make it, he'll make a good pass to a guy and they'll make the shot. And same thing, even with Anthony Davis, you can give him the ball in the post, and you can feel pretty confident like you can get 2 points out of that possession. Like I don't know if you feel that the same way with Giannis, which is crazy because he's averaging 30 points a game, and it's going to be the MVP. Well, potentially could be the MVP, I guess. Like I said, this weekend may have changed some things in terms of that, but he could very well be the MVP again this season. So it's weird that you could argue he's not really like a go-to guy at the end of the games. But yeah, that just kind of showed me from that Bucks game on Friday night. So then, yeah, the Lakers handled them. I mean, again, LeBron wasn't alone. Anthony Davis had 30 points. That kind of helps. No one else really did much. Just like little contributions from everyone. No one else had like a massive night. But obviously, when you have Anthony Davis get 30 and 9, that definitely helps. And then they played the Clippers to this earlier this afternoon, and they beat them by 9. Though it could have been. I forget what the highest lead they had was, but it was like they cut it to 9, I think, at the end with like a 3. So they could have won by double digits. But even in this game, LeBron still 28, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. Anthony Davis again, 30 and 8. So that's kind of going to my point about, at least with the Lakers, and that's why I kind of thought this was hurting LeBron's case a little bit, is that any game you go in knowing Anthony Davis can give you 30. Like, very few teams have that, where they have two guys that could get you 30 points every night. And that's why I'm saying that could probably hurt LeBron's case a little bit. But in terms of their overall team success, like, that's a great thing to have. He had 28, and then obviously, much like, I guess not much like DiVincenzo, but they don't win this game, in my opinion, without the play of Avery Bradley, both on offense and defense. He had 24 points, hit 6 threes, was playing good defense throughout the game, on whether it was Pat Beverly or Lou Will, whoever they had him guarding. At the time, he was disruptive. And then, I mean, not just him, the entire team kind of bought in. And they made a mention of this, I think, even in the Bucks game, or definitely in this game against the Clippers. Kuzma's actually he's not really doing as much offense. He only had 8 points tonight, but he had 10 rebounds, 7 defensive rebounds. And he was playing good defense, relatively speaking. Obviously, he's not like an excellent lockdown defender. But he's one of those things where, like, if you give effort, that can generally be enough on the defensive end. Just like try to stay in front of a guy, try to do your best. Like that in and of itself, like, get over on your switches, like all that stuff. That honestly could be enough. And it helped them out tonight, and then obviously, I mean, not tonight, but earlier today, and then obviously helped them get the win, which was big because these were two of the teams that I think were these the only two teams? They might have been the only two teams the Lakers hadn't beat yet. They were 0-2 against the Clippers and 0-1 against the Bucks, and they handled both of them tonight. These are arguably the two of, outside the Lakers, the 3 or 4 best teams in the whole entire league. And again, these were both in LA, though obviously the second game wasn't technically a home game, but both these were in LA. But it was a big statement weekend for not only LeBron. I mean, you had Kuzma putting the crown back on his head. I guess you could argue putting it back on his head after as he went to the bench late in that game, kind of signifying, like, hey, many people think, like, oh, this guy's the king, or that guy's the king, or this guy's the best player, or this guy's the MVP, but, like, until LeBron gives it up, he's still that guy, and people kind of forgot about that last season due to the fact that he was injured and missed a lot of time. Even though when healthy, the Lakers were, I think they were, 3rd or 4th in the West, something like that. Like, though it was Christmas when he got hurt, so there was a lot of season left to play, but the Lakers were still good last year, and their roster was not, I don't say it was as bad as it was this year. I mean, it wasn't as good as it is this year, but they did also not have Anthony Davis on that team. So there is that. But yeah, no, this was a big statement weekend for LeBron, even though he says he's not going for regular season awards, all that stuff, but, like, you could tell these games matter to him in whatever degree they matter, just because you could see the effort. He's diving on the ground, going after loose balls. He's guarding Giannis. He's guarding Kawhi. Like, that's not something he normally would do in a regular season game if it didn't matter. But he knew, like, these games are important. Maybe not necessarily in terms of, like, awards or anything like that, but they're important just for the mindset of the team being like, hey, look, when we lock in, we can beat everybody. And I think that was what the point they tried to make this weekend is, like, look, when the Lakers, maybe not even, because I don't even think this is, like, the best LeBron game he could have played against the Clippers. He played well, but a lot of this, he hit 12 free throws, which is not something he normally does. If he's like only 7 of 17 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3. So it's not like he was great offensively. He got the free throw line a lot and hit his free throws, which is big for him. But yeah, like, this is not even a great LeBron game, and they still won by 10 points. So I think this weekend as a whole was big for LeBron to show, like, hey, look, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still arguably the best player in the league, and he showed that against the two of the guys that people feel as if have taken his spot amongst that top upper echelon of players in Kawhi and Giannis. And then also to show the Lakers are like, hey, look, you guys say we can't beat the best teams? All right, well, here we just did it back-to-back games. So this will be big for them come playoff time, in my opinion, just because, like, it just, like, the mindset of knowing you can beat these teams is honestly half the battle. When you've come in, and even though regular season records get thrown out in the postseason, but just knowing you can beat a team going in is always gives you a little bit of a boost, in my personal opinion. Just so you know you've done it, and you know that when you play your best, there aren't many teams that can compete with you, and that's kind of where the Lakers are at, especially when you have a guy like LeBron on your team. So it's a big weekend for the Lakers. Obviously, you would hope that they just you hope they didn't put too much weight into these two games, and they don't just hit a skid after this, because that isn't impossible. But for these two games, like I said, big for the Lakers and big for LeBron, and they showed up and showed out like many weren't sure that they could do, but they did, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You get the dub. You get the dub. So, when we come back, we're going to talk about a different team who's going to be going through a transition, whether that's the rest of this season or next year, because they have let go of their coach. So, we're going to talk about who that is, who got let go, maybe why he got let go, and kind of what's next for that team and where they go from here, not only this season and next season as well. So, we talk about all that stuff right after this break, so stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, if you're unaware, you didn't know, the Nets are now in search for a new coach. They let go of Coach Kenny Atkinson. I think it was Saturday, sometime Saturday morning, is when the report went out that he was being relieved of his duties, which definitely came as a surprise. In turn, more so, not necessarily that he would get let go, because obviously, the Nets, though Kyrie and KD have missed obviously a lot of time, but the Nets aren't having the greatest season, so it's not that surprising. He got let go. Plus, he was the coach before KD and Kyrie got there, so maybe they didn't want him to be the coach. I don't know. You never really know about that kind of stuff. And obviously, the Sean Marks and everybody else has come out and said it wasn't about those guys, though. It is kind of weird that the very first game after he gets fired, their friend, DeAndre Jordan, is now back in the starting lineup. I want to say back, because he's only started, I think, 5 games or something this season. It just found that funny that they switched back to, switched to having him in the lineup, just because it was that seems like a weird thing to do, especially when you're trying, in theory, to develop Jared Allen to kind of figure out if he's going to be a useful piece for you moving forward. You kind of already know what DeAndre Jordan is. He's here for, I think he signed for, 3 or 4 years, but, he's not a part of the future. Jared Allen's 21, 22 years old. DeAndre's in his 30s. You kind of already know what to expect with DeAndre. Jared Allen, in theory, could at least continue to grow and continue to develop. So you'd think you'd at least want to try to see what he has. But again, they chose to go with DeAndre, and I guess it's the Bulls. So they beat the. I'm pretty sure they beat the Bulls. Let me make sure the Nets didn't blow that game. Oh yeah, they barely beat the Bulls by 3, but they still beat them. But yes, that was just a weird thing to just immediately happen. Oh yeah, we let go of the coach, and then also we're going to, in the interim, start DeAndre Jordan. That was just kind of a weird turn of events. But regardless, yeah, Kenny Atkinson is done with, and it was unfortunate for some of the. I'm saying unfortunate, not the right word, but I know some diehard Net fans were. It was kind of mixed Because it's kind of like how you feel about a guy, like if you're a Sixers fan, if you kind of feel about a guy like Brett Brown, where you're like, all right, this guy was with us through when we were struggling, got us to a point back of relevancy, made it so that people would want to come and play here, but like, how good of a coach is he really? And how far can we go with him as the coach? Because that was kind of the biggest thing. Like, obviously, is Kenny Atkinson great with player development? Yes, I mean, he's turned Dinwiddie into a borderline all-star, turned D'Lo into helped turn D'Lo into an all-star, though. I mean, at least he was a top 2 pick, so it's not like that was that surprising. Helped develop Karis LeVert. I mean, I think Joe Harris was a good shooter, but obviously he's become one of, if not the best, 3-point shooters in the league at this point. Has developed Jared Allen to a degree. Obviously, Karis has his bouts with injuries, so that's kind of what's hurt him the most. But when he's played, he's been really good. Now, obviously, because they got him like late in the first round, I think, whenever he got drafted. Same with Jared Allen too. So like these aren't like lottery picks they were getting, but they developed them into very solid players. So that wasn't the issue. But obviously, for people that watch the Nets more, and my dad was one of those guys, he like his in-game stuff was a little wonky. Like some of the lineups, some of the adjustments he'd make, some of his late game situational stuff was a little weird too. So it's just like one of those things where, it's like, again, the time is weird because you're almost towards the end of the season. There's like a month left, so it's like, all right, why not just ride it out to the end? But it's just one of those things, like, if you kind of already know the season's like a wash, even if they make the playoffs, like, they don't have the team that they're going to have next year with no Kyrie, no KD. Maybe add in, trade a guy here or there, whatever. This season does not really matter in their long-term plan. So it's like, all right, keeping him around, kind of stringing him along doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I get it from that perspective, like why you'd want to get out ahead of this and just like, all right, get a start on the coaching search. So that part makes sense. But like I was saying, it's kind of like even because, I mean, if you know any Sixers fans, you see following Sixers fans on social media, they're kind of over it with Brett Brown. But it's kind of the same thing. It's just like, I mean, everyone kind of pegs it on like the Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr thing, where Mark Jackson had a team, they lost in, I think, the second round of the playoffs this last year. Then the next year, basically that same team, when they just moved a couple guys from the bench to starting lineup. They had like Harrison Barnes and Draymond and moved like David Lee and maybe Iggy, I think, to the bench. And then bada bing, bada boom, they won the championship the next year, like basically with the same roster. Obviously, everybody's a year older or whatever, but basically the same roster, just made a couple tweaks to the lineups and boom, now all of a sudden they're a championship caliber team. So everyone thinks they're like, oh, all right, this guy may be our Mark Jackson, where he develops the young guys, gets them to where we need them to be, even though obviously this is a different scenario with the Nets because their two best players are free agents that were developed by other guys. But he developed Karis LeVert, developed Jared Allen, developed Dinwiddie, developed Joe Harris. And he's only going to take us but so far. We need to get out ahead of this before we just end up stuck. And that's kind of where, like I said, that's kind of where the Sixers have been with Brett Brown, just because many people don't really know, and myself included, like how good of a coach he is. But he obviously was there with them through the trust the process days, and has developed to a degree. Embiid, Simmons, even though obviously Simmons still needs to develop some parts of his game, but he's very good at other parts, so it is what it is. But it's like, how far can we go with Brett Brown as the coach? And obviously, I wondered that as soon as they lost that Boston series a couple years ago, where Boston was like, hey, we're just going to let Ben Simmons shoot. And the Sixers still haven't found an answer for that kind of defense consistently since that day. But yeah, so just like, so that was interesting. And then, though, the funniest part about the Kenny Atkinson split was that the belief that it seemed to be definitely mutual, but almost like more so that he was pushing for it, depending on who you ask. Just because I think there was a report that came out that he was pushing for us as just as much, if not more, than the Nets were, which is kind of interesting. Because again, he hadn't even got the chance to coach KD yet. So it's like, how do you know that you don't want to coach this team before the team's even fully formed? So that was an interesting aspect of it. I think it was like, I saw someone tweet that, like Vincent Goodwill or someone tweeted that out, that that he reportedly was just as much wanted to split as the Nets did, which is interesting. But yeah, they had the press conference for it yesterday. Sean Marks, like, obviously said all the right things about what Kenny's done for them, and obviously the circumstances aren't were unfortunate, but obviously they're looking for what helps them get to the next level, and they decided if it was time for another voice, and I guess ultimately they did decide. And I mean, his record with the Nets wasn't great, 118 and 118 wins to 190 losses, and obviously they're 28-34 this season. But again, Kyrie and KD spend most of the time not playing, so that doesn't help. And yeah, and so then also Sean Marks he didn't really answer it specifically, like what could have or what kind of led to the decision per se, other than like needing another voice, because obviously the coach never got to coach the full team, so it is kind of a weird aspect of it, because you thought when you signed them, you thought he was going to be the coach, so what changed in this time period? Yeah, that part of it was interesting to me. But yeah, I mean, Marks did a good job of saying that it wasn't just about certain players or certain people that decided that, like Atkinson wasn't going to be there anymore. But it was the interesting aspect of it. And also, I think I saw some report, obviously it's hard to know how serious these things are, but there was a report out there that Kyrie wanted Ty Lue to be the coach, which, I mean, I don't know if I'm giving Kyrie that much power just yet. I mean, if they end up signing Ty Lue, they end up signing Ty Lue. It is what it is, though. I think he's on the Clippers staff now, so I don't know how easy or hard it would be to get him away from that staff. And honestly, I don't think he'd be mad about coaching KD. But yeah, I just don't know how much I would like giving Kyrie too much power, because seems a little wishy-washy, seems a little all over the place. Obviously, still a great player, but again, your players should have say, especially your star players, because you want to, in a sense, make them happy, but they can't have all the say. Like, am I 100% certain that when LeBron went to the LA, he won? I mean, when they let go Luke Walton, that he wanted Frank Vogel as the coach? Not necessarily. I mean, that's why they had Jason Kidd there. It seemed like he wanted Jason Kidd a little bit more. But Frank Vogel's worked out fine for them this year, so it's like, I mean, when's the last time you've gone through a whole NBA season and have heard nothing about LeBron's coach? Like, Frank Vogel basically just, honestly, might as well not even be on the sideline. That's how little anybody's talked about him this season, which is kind of absurd. But yeah, it's just like, sometimes you have to do what's best for the organization. If you think a guy that maybe, if they don't think Ty Lue is the guy, then don't force him on the team just because Kyrie wants him. So I hope that they do their due diligence in trying to find the next head coach, because then, like, there's just not, there's only, like I said, there's only so much you can do to try to cater to your star players before it could actually be a detriment to you. So, like I said, that'd be interesting to see how they go about their coaching search. Personally. But hey, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, no, the Nets are in need of a new head coach now, so that'll be interesting. The Jacques Vaughn's the interim head coach, so we'll see how that goes over these last, 15, 20 games, how much ever it is now, obviously into the playoffs, assuming they don't just bottom out and make it. But, I mean, they don't just bottom out and miss the playoffs, excuse me. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes, and obviously we'll see, because, I mean, at this point, I don't think Tyler's going to leave to coach the Nets. I would think this probably is all going to play out more so over the summer. So we'll see, or spring, summer, whenever. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Nets are in need of a new head coach. And the one other thing I will say is, if it is true that Atkinson did one out before he even got the coach KD, what is that? That would be a little interesting about both him as a coach and also just his time with Kyrie. To an extent. Obviously, I'm not saying that, he had issues with them or whatever, but obviously he didn't even play that many games. But if he didn't even want to wait around to see how it would work with KD, That's interesting to me, just because you would think as a coach you want to coach elite level players, but maybe that's just not his thing. Maybe some guys just aren't built to handle the stars per se. Some guys need like Luke Walton now. He's been out of the spotlight in Sacramento now, so they got off to a slow start, but they could very well make the 8th seed this year. Especially the way they played recently. Maybe that's just kind of where Luke Walton's best. Maybe he wasn't built for the spotlight of the LA and the Lakers and kind of all the pressures that come with that. Maybe he's a smaller caliber coach, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some guys are college coaches. They don't want to get higher than that. Some guys are high school coaches. They don't want to get higher than that. So everybody's a little bit different. But if that is true, that is kind of interesting that he was just like, I don't even want to wait around for KD to come back. I'm out. No, like I said, we won't know this true. This his side, the net side, and the truth. So we won't know for certain what his side of the story is per se. But that, like I said, that's just an interesting aspect of it. If that is true, that he did want out just as much, if not more, than the Nets wanted him gone, because that would just be a weird. That'd be a weird thing. Just because I would think I'd at least want to see what coaching KD was like, personally. But maybe that's just me. But yeah, so after this break, we're going to come back and we're going to switch gears to the NFL. And it seems like we could be getting news on the NFL CBA any day now in terms of what the players have decided. And I think the one thing that has happened at the very least is that the owners have done a good job of pitting the players against each other. And taking what should be an owners versus players to do players like battle, you could say, and turning into a players versus players battle. And I think that is going to help the owners when it comes to negotiating time. So we're going to talk about that. Talk about, I guess, kind of what I think could happen with the CBA vote, and honestly, what happens if they decide not to pass it. So yeah, we'll talk about all that stuff right after this break. So stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, as I said, the NFL CBA is yet to be voted on fully by the players. I think like the official vote should be out at some point, but there was a report from, I think this is from Saturday, that came out from ESPN by Jeremy Fowler, that the NFL owners are kind of hoping that the CBA fails. He said in his article, a number of NFL owners hope the proposed collective bargaining agreement doesn't pass with the players because they believe they can negotiate a better deal with eyes on an 18-game season in the future, a league source told ESPN. They think they can get a better deal next year, said the source, who quantified the dissatisfied ownership group as more than a handful. They feel like they gave too much on the economics. The owners told the commissioner, Roger Goodell, on their belief at the owners' meeting in New York in February. The source said, citing frustration with the players' monetary increases and increases in the size of the active roster. The owners approved the proposed CBA last month, although ESPN reported at the time that the vote was not unanimous. So, I guess that part at least kind of checks out. 3/4 of the owners had to approve the CBA for it to be ratified. So there's 32 teams. So 3/4 of 32 is 24, so even more than a handful would be 8. But they needed, so that means at most there's 8 owners that didn't disagree. So that's still a lot, but I mean, there's still a lot of owners that agreed with the CBA, so it's not that many people that wanted this. But hey, there's, like I said, more than a handful, so there's that. Players have until 11:59 Eastern Thursday, so this upcoming Thursday, to cast their votes on the proposed CBA via DocuSign. CBA will pass if it receives a simple majority, 50% plus 1 vote of all ballots submitted. It would be in effect for the 2020 league year, with a possible move to a 17-game season beginning in 2021. Just a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, so players such as Aaron Rodgers, Richard Sherman, Marquise Pouncey, Marquise Pouncey have staunchly opposed a deal which offers a revenue sharing increase from 47% to 48.5% once the 70 games schedule 60, and some owners felt that increase was too generous. The source told Fallon in July. The NFLPA executive director acknowledged that the league had raised the idea of an 18-game season early negotiation, but he didn't see it happening, and I don't see it happening either. Among other issues, some owners had with the deal, source said, are the game day roster increases from 46 to 48, the expansion of practice squad players to 48 players in 2022, the lack of a proposed cap for the highest paid players, essentially a quarterback salary cap. Minimum salary players make as much as the NFL's working body, and since those players will see significant salary increases under the new deal, second-year players rising. Minimum salary players make up much of the cap. I didn't say that right. Make up much of the cap, and since those players will see significant increases under the new deal, second-year players rising from almost 500 to almost 700,000 next year, for example. Some feeling that the new deal will pass, but some NFL locker rooms are divided because those in opposition feel the concessions aren't enough to offset the lack of a 50-50 share or more long-term health benefits. So, now, do I honestly believe completely that the owners think they can get an 18-game season and that would actually pass? No shot. I think they're just kind of, a part of this is just kind of, whenever you hear these things, you're like, oh, why didn't this get released to the media? Like, what is there to gain from this information being out? And you could argue they're just kind of using this as a, like, hey, look, if you don't sign this one, it's only going to get worse, so just sign this one kind of deal. That's kind of what I think, at least a part of this is. Now, do I agree? Now, do I believe some owners definitely think they gave up too much? Of course. It'd be foolish of me not to believe that. But at the same time, I do think that there's a reason this came out now. Like right before the vote is officially official, like where people are still casting their ballots. I think that has to at least be a part of it, just because they want this deal to pass, because they know that, hey, look, there's a chance that the players might want more, and then obviously then you're working, now you're talking about a work stoppage next year, all that other stuff. So then no one wants to deal with. But I think that part of this is just them trying to like pressure the players to be like, hey, look, if you don't sign this one, it's only going to get worse for you, so just sign this one. So we'll see how that goes. But also, and it's kind of the point when we talked about like how much like the minimum salary players make up the league, like how that's the majority of the league are the players that don't make as much money. This is why this whole thing has turned into a player versus player debate, just because you have the top guys being like, hey, no, this deal isn't enough. We're not enough health benefits. We're playing an extra game. We don't want to do that. Blah blah blah. All that stuff. That again is affecting the top level players, because they're going to be the ones playing the extra game, not necessarily the practice squad guys or the bottom of the roster guys that may not even be active on game days. But they're also the guys that could necessarily afford to miss out on some paychecks. And not everybody can be J.J. Watt and host SNL. Not everybody can be Aaron Rodgers and be in State Farm commercials, or be Patrick Mahomes. Though, I mean, he hasn't signed a new deal yet. But by this time next year, he will have, if they're in a work stoppage or not. But yeah, he will have signed his new deal. Not everybody can be, even like who's like a Baker who was in all those Progressive commercials throughout the season. A Dak or a Saquon who's got those Campbell soup commercials. Like, not everybody can be that. Not everybody is afforded that luxury to be able to have those be able to have those other streams of income. They're just kind of relying strictly on football to pay their bills, pay for their families, pay their agents, pay their accountants, maybe help support other members of their family, whoever it is. They're dependent on that. So if they don't have that, then they're kind of out of luck, as opposed to like guys that have been in the league for a while and have made a lot of money. They can fall back on some of the money they've made, just because, like I said, they can kind of afford it. So I think that's the bad part about this, and that's kind of always why I thought this deal was going to pass, even though I don't think that they should play that 17th game, just because not enough guys are willing to miss out on that check, and that's the good thing for the owners, is that they only need a 50% majority, like +1, basically. Like, they don't need 3/4 of the league, because if that happened, then that was never going to happen. But you could get 50% of the guys, seeing as more than 50% of the league is guys that aren't making that much money comparatively to the top guys, and get them into passes. And I think it was my dad was telling me, like, and Nate Solder from the Giants, he was talking to guys about he called like a bunch of different guys about it, and they were all like, yeah, we're gonna pass it, like, it's fine. And they was like, I think Aaron Rodgers said he kind of emailed guys about it, if they want to talk about it, and they're like, nah, we're good. And I think it comes from the fact that a lot of these guys can't afford to miss out on the years of work, even a couple months worth of work. Like, they need these checks. So it's going to be hard for them to be like, yeah, no, I understand that what we're fighting for, and like, again, are there definitely better things they could get? Yes, but this is not to say this is a great 100% a great deal for them, but this is definitely an improvement. And because of that might be good enough. Like I said, the minimum salaries are increased. There's more guys active on game days. The 17th game is like, in theory, would be a 17th game check. Well, no, I guess, 17th game would be the 17th game check, so that would benefit them. I think another part was the extra playoff teams, so maybe like the playoff bonuses that'll help guys out. So yeah, just like a lot of the scenario, the situation has allowed the owners to kind of pin the players against each other, because you have these guys at the top that are talking about how bad this deal is, how much we need to stand firm, and all that stuff's great, but also not all those guys are up there. Like, there's a very few select guys that can afford to say that, because they have the finances to be able to support their family without the NFL for like a couple months or a season even. These other guys that are barely scraping by and are barely making the roster don't have that luxury. They can't afford to miss out on stuff like this, so that they may not be as gung-ho about voting against it as some of the elite players in the league are. And I think that was always going to be the issue, and I think that's become more of an issue, especially with this negotiation, with it being so active on social media, is that you can see just that you like, there are players actively telling guys like, hey, look, don't do this, isn't good for us. And then you can also see at the same time, you can also see or hear about guys talking about how they're talking to their teammates, they're talking to different players, and they're like, hey, look, this works for me, like, this is fine. Like, honestly, again, could it improve? Sure. But this is good enough for me right now. Like, I'm willing to take this. And you can see them kind of, though, these players kind of trying to go back and forth to these guys. And again, that's all it doesn't hurt the owners anyway. Like I said, the owners can kind of afford to stand firm because they're making the most of the money compared to the players, obviously. Like, they're making a lot of the money, so their ideals are more in line. Like, at the end of the day, even if like you're not Jerry Jones, or you're not Robert Kraft or somebody, even if you're the owner of, like, say, like the Detroit Lions or like the Bucks or whoever, the Los Angeles Chargers, it doesn't matter. You're still an owner of a football team, so you're probably, if not a high millionaire, a borderline billionaire. So again, since all these guys are necessarily on the same level, their ideals can be more in line on what they want in this deal, as opposed to, like I said, there's a bigger spectrum of guys in the NFL, from like the top elite level guys that are making, well, basically just mainly quarterbacks that are making like $30 million plus. Then you have the guys that are making like $20 million plus, which is mainly also quarterbacks, but maybe a top flight like defensive player, or a top flight running back or receiver or something. Then you got like the $10 to $20 million, which is like a majority of the people. Then you have like all the people under that, which is like rookies, older veterans, mid-tier level guys, Those lower tier guys are the guys that aren't necessarily guaranteed to be in the league in 5 to 10 years when they renegotiate this deal again. These guys are going to have to fight these guys on special teams that are doing all the dirty work, so that the Aaron Rodgers of the world can get the accolades for. I mean, obviously he's a big part of that if they were to win a Super Bowl, but they're doing some of the extra stuff that Aaron Rodgers obviously can't do, whether it's play defense, rush the passer, cover kicks, cover punts, stuff like that. Like the little jobs that no one really thinks about that don't matter until they matter. Like, no one knows how bad your special teams are until you have really bad special teams, and it's like, oh, this is like an important aspect of our team. No one thinks about that in the time, but then when your kicker is bad, or when your coverage units are bad and they're always like giving up big returns, or your punter is not good, or your long snapper is messing up the snaps and that's ruining things, like that stuff matters. So those are the kind of guys that are like on that tier of like, hey, they're probably going to vote for this, not necessarily that they don't really care what the top elite level guys have to say, because again, we're not in the same circumstances. So that's kind of the issue with the NFL PA. With this, just with the players as a whole, just because not all the guys are on the same playing field, so that's gonna hurt them in terms of being able to negotiate, because not everybody's going to want the same things. In theory, all the players should want, like, hey, we don't want 17 games, we want this, we want these benefits, we want that, we want that. But at the same time, there's more guys going to be willing to compromise on stuff than other guys, and I think that's kind of the issue. There's going to be the guys that are going to be wholeheartedly against. There's going to be guys that are going to be wholeheartedly for it. There's going to be a lot of guys in the middle. And I think it's going to be easier for some of those guys to sway towards for it than against it, just because they don't want to miss out on what potentially could be some money down the line, or even potentially a worse deal. Like, again, we don't know. And if this owner thing is true, in that they think they gave up too much, then what? Like, now are you going to agree to a worse deal than this one was? And now that makes you guys look even that makes you guys not look great. But now you settle for a worse deal than the one you had on your tape, that had on the table in the past. So that looks bad. Or I guess you just have a worse option, and now some of these guys are unhappy. So it's a weird scenario the players are in, but we should know by sometime this week how it all has played out. I guess we'll probably know, Friday at the latest? No, well, I guess not at the latest, because Friday at the earliest, I should say, just because I think, barring every player getting their votes in before Thursday night, which I don't think everybody will, because I think a lot of these player reps and everything are going to be trying to discuss these with these guys down to the last minute. Just be like, hey, look, this is what we're getting, this is what we're not getting, this is what we should be fighting for, this is what we have that we can continue to fight for, this is what we need to be fighting for, stuff like that. So that's all going to continue. So like I said, we should know sometime this week, but it might be a little while. And I honestly think the players are just probably there's going to be enough players that vote for this deal, and I think there's going to end up playing an extra game. It's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, money talks. So I don't think enough players are going to want to miss out on those checks. I think it was Marcus Pouncey was telling guys like how much money they're going to make, and it was like $250,000, something like that, or whatever. And I'm like, there's a lot of guys that are making more than that can't really afford to live off $250,000, based on even like first round rookies don't make $250,000. They make in the millions. So you drop them down $250,000 for whatever period of time that they're in a work stoppage. That's not going to be enough for them to support whatever lifestyle they're living, whether, like I said, whether supporting their family, friends, which they shouldn't be doing, but many people do, paying financial advisors, paying agents, different people. Like, they may not, $250 might not be enough for them, so they may need that actual game check money, and that's going to cause them to vote in favor of the new CBA. So, again, you'll see how that all will play out very, very soon. But after this break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about, we have a few more quarterback updates, if you will, for a couple guys around the league. So we'll talk about that. Give those updates and to kind of see what that could mean for these guys' future. As you know, free agency is getting ready to kick off, I think, in another week or so. So we're coming. It seems like it's been forever that we've been talking about this, but very soon we will actually have some more definitive facts, deals, details, rumors, all that fun stuff. So we'll talk about the new quarterback update right after this break. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
So, one of the people involved in the new quarterback news that we were going to discuss is none other than Dak Prescott. I mean, there was a lot of reports throughout the process about him. People were saying that, like, a couple weeks ago, it was like, he's definitely going to get the franchise tag. They're not going to agree to a long-term deal. Now, it seems that at least they have offered him a deal. It's reported, I think this was like a day or two ago, that the Dallas Cowboys and quarterback Dak Prescott have been working on a new deal from CBS Sports. This specific article, obviously, though you can find it other places as well. But they've been working toward the deal quite some time, and apparently they have offered what seems to be a good deal to Dak, according to Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News. The Cowboys are prepared to make the quarterback one of the highest paid players in NFL history. Watkins reports that the Cowboys met with Dak Prescott's representation twice since the NFL Combine, which ended March 2nd. Now is the 8th. And obviously this being Sunday. You guys hearing this on Monday, so that'll be the 9th. Watkins reports that the Cowboys, recently they reportedly offered Prescott a contract which includes an average salary of $33 million with $105 million guaranteed. This contract would exceed Aaron Rodgers' deal in both total money and guaranteed money. Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks most recently reset the market with his 4-year, $140 million contract, which included $107 million guaranteed, $70 million that was guaranteed when pen hit paper. According to Patrick Walker of CBS Sports, Prescott had been offered a contract with an average salary of $33 million before, but declined. It is possible that if Prescott does not accept this offer, then the Cowboys might have to go the route of franchise tag. Last month, Ian Rappaport reported that if the Cowboys were to tag Prescott, they would use the exclusive franchise tag. The non-exclusive franchise tag is worth the average of the top 5 salaries at the player's position over the last 5 years, whereas the exclusive franchise tag is worth the average of the top five salaries for this current year. Another big reason the Cowboys would like to use the exclusive tag is because Prescott would be unable to negotiate with other teams. Interestingly enough, the exclusive tag for quarterbacks this offseason is estimated to be around $33 million, which is apparently what they're offering him. And it's also possible the two sides wait until the new CBA that we just talked about in the last segment has been established. The NFL players are voting on it and all that stuff, and that could maybe change some things. But at the very least, for Dak, it sounds like he could be getting a hefty pay raise very, very soon. Now, it is interesting, and it is going to seem to be interesting if this contract is true and he does end up signing this. What the guaranteed money is at signing, because obviously that is a big aspect of it, because there's obviously the guaranteed money as a whole, but also the guaranteed money at signing is a little bit different than that, because obviously you in theory want, especially for a guy like Dak that's been getting paid lower amounts just because he's been a 4th round pick, so he hasn't getting his number isn't as high as some of the other guys. So he's obviously going to want some more money up front than maybe other guys would, that maybe are first-round picks or top 5 picks or whatever. So that would be interesting to see that aspect of it, and also just kind of like how long is it? Is it like a 4-year deal? Is it a 5-year deal? Things like that would be interesting to see how that all plays out. 'Cause also, I thought that I saw on Twitter that there was something like Dak was only looking for like a 3-year deal because he wants to be a free agent again around age 30, which may be true, may not be true. We'll see how that kind of plays out. But yeah, so it seems like at least Dak could very well be getting paid. And good for him. It makes sense. Franchise tagging him would be weird, in my opinion, because, again, everyone else in his class, in terms of like the good quarterbacks like Goff and Wentz, both got their deals signed and got their extensions done. No hassle, no nothing. So it'd be weird if Dak, who people will argue is better than both of them and has had more success. Well, I guess you can't say he has more success than Goff, because Goff went to a Super Bowl. Dak hasn't done that yet. But you could argue he's better than both of those guys. I wouldn't, but you could. No, I could argue he's better than Goff. I don't know about Wentz, but you could argue he's better than Goff. So you would think he'd be able to at least get something comparable to them, if not more. And it hasn't happened yet. But also the fact that this is reportedly what he got offered earlier this season, even though like the numbers sound great and it seems like he's getting paid a lot and blah blah blah. But I'm like, if he turned this down before the season and then during the season he was second in the league in passing yards, something, threw for like 5,000 or near 5,000. Let me look up the exact numbers. Threw for almost 5,000 yards. I mean, obviously his team didn't get to the playoffs, so that hurts his case a wee bit. But yeah, threw for 4,900. Excuse me, 4,900, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So yeah. So if you have that season, and again, you go 8-8, miss the playoffs, so that doesn't help your case. But at the same time, you've also made the playoffs 2 other previous years. It'd be weird to just be like, hey, I'm going to take the deal that I didn't take before the season after I had a pretty good season. That would be kind of interesting to me from a negotiating standpoint. I'm like, what changed to make this deal more lucrative than it was in the past? So that'd be weird to me if he decides to take the deal now as opposed to turning it down. Also, trying to get like bumping up to like 34 or 35. I'm assuming that's what you held out for. You held out for more money, you would think. So now you get to the point where you could get more money, and now you're not going to get more money because you take this deal. That'd be kind of weird. And then especially since at the end of the day, if they just give you franchise tag, you're still going to get the $33 million. So it's like, worst comes to worst, you're getting $33 million this year anyway, on average. I mean, obviously, you may not get that, might not be his technical cap hit if he's signed to a contract. When he signs a franchise tag, that's what he gets, because I think what they said is exclusive franchise tag. So that's the average of the top 5 guys in this position this year, which is good for him, because that gets him more money. So that's good for him. But yeah, that'd be weird if he decided to hold out to just get the same deal he could have gotten before the season. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So, like I said, I think like he's not going anywhere. He's not going to like leave in free agency. The Cowboys aren't going to let that happen. That would be dumb on their part. So I don't think Jerry Jones is. I mean, Jerry Jones is a bright guy, so he won't let that happen. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what goes on from there with that. And yeah, I guess like I said, we'll see how that plays out. I don't think, like they said in the article, they may very well wait till the new CBA hits to figure out just exactly what he will or won't be getting paid, or like salary cap going up, how that affects the franchise tags, all that fun stuff. So yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, like I said, good for Dak. He's going to be a happily paid man very, very soon. But some other quarterback news is that the Saints apparently, this is from ESPN, Mike Triplett, now the New Orleans Saints plan to place a first-round tender on restricted free agent quarterback Taysom Hill. A source told ESPN's Adam Schefter, this came down on Friday, meaning another team would have to give up a first-round pick to sign him away. The Saints will also have the right to match any offer that Hill might sign with another team after making the qualifying offer, which is a 1 year and worth $4.67 million, according to Over the Cap. New Orleans also still plans to resign Hill before free agency begins March 18th, which, if it did, would make the first round tender. Like, that wouldn't matter. And obviously he's become a very interesting player just because he can do a little bit of everything. At least he has done a little bit of everything for the Saints. Then obviously, like Hill says, he's going through the process. Through early in the offseason, he wants to be a quarterback. He probably wants to stay with the Saints because obviously he has some familiarity there. But the willingness for the Saints to put a first-round tender on him just shows, I think, how much they don't want to get rid of him. Because I would be absolutely shocked if any team's willing to potentially part ways with a first-round pick for Taysom Hill. Like, that'd be absurd. Like, I don't see any circumstance in which that happens. So because of that, the Saints know that, and they're like, all right, we're gonna find a way to keep him, because, like I said, it seems like from earlier in the offseason, that's going to be their plan, not only as a backup quarterback this season, but the quarterback of the future, potentially. And obviously they will use this year with Drew Brees back to kind of help groom him to be that guy, maybe utilize him more in passing situations. Obviously they use him as a runner, as a receiver, kick returner, on special teams, what have you. But if they want him to be the franchise quarterback, they're going to need to utilize him in a way that allows him to pass the ball more, which, again, is weird because you have Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So you're like, why do we take him off the field to play a different quarterback? But, I mean, Sean Payton does weird stuff, so that doesn't shock me at all. But hey, we'll see how that works out. But yeah, no, so them putting a first-round tender on him just kind of just doubles down their belief in him. Because obviously, if they put a second round, maybe even a third. I mean, second round, I just don't think anyone's giving up a second round pick for Taysom Hill either. But I'm saying the first round pick just shows, like, hey, we mean business about this. Like, we don't really want to let this guy go. And I mean, and I'm saying, like, I guess from Taysom Hill's perspective, that has to feel good just in terms of it seems like the Saints want to do everything they can to keep you. And so that's a good sign. And it seems like you're going to have a place there once Drew Brees is gone. So, like, again, that's good for him. But you never really know with these things. But it should be interesting, at the very least, to see how that all will play out. But, hey, good for Taysom Hill. Seems like, at the very least, if he is going to get some money from somebody, I guess either team would be willing to give up a first-round pick for him, which would be absurd. But I guess it's not impossible. Or he's going to get he's not going to get, like, Dak Prescott money like we just talked about, but he's going to get a decent amount of money from somebody. Like I said, not going to get Dak Prescott money, but if the signs with the Saints, he's going to get decent money to be the backup / future franchise quarterback. So, hey, there are worse situations he could be in, especially what he's got gone through in his career, both pre-NFL and during the NFL to get to this point. But hey, good for him. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, so those are just a couple of the pieces that are going to be involved in this quarterback carousel, if you will, this offseason. But yeah, we'll see. Obviously, like I said, we're about a week and change away from the free agency opening officially. I guess, I think then they have the 2-day, tampering period where people could, in theory sign, but, not really sign. They agree to deals, but they don't technically sign. But yeah, so that's coming up. Not this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, the 18th. Obviously, like I said earlier in this segment. So yeah, we'll see what changes, what more rumors come out, and if anybody gets hit with the franchise tag between now and then, that could potentially hurt some of those, or could kind of take some names off the list for quarterbacks could potentially be on the move. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that, all that stuff throughout the process. And speaking of process, we got to talk about the XFL this weekend, because while there was some good games, there was an ending that happened in one of the games, and a process that the officials did not seem to willingly want to go through, that affected the game, point blank period. It had a direct effect on the game and how it ended, and how it could have ended, at least. So I talk about that, talk about the XFL a little bit as a whole. We also talk about that game and how it ended. And also kind of the XFL's reaction, because I give them credit for how they responded to what happened. But, yeah, we got to talk about all that stuff. So we will right after this break. So stay tuned.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
MC Podcast Network. So the XFL, we didn't talk about it. Well, I didn't. Let me not say we. I did not talk about it last week, but there were some interesting things that happened overall. One, my Houston Roughnecks, I'm half joking, but I'm also not, are still undefeated, though. We will get to that game in a second, because that was a mess, that ending. The Guardians finally won a game again. Shout out to Perez. He did his thing. You might also keep that spot from McGloin. Dallas, they beat Dallas, who was without Landry Jones, so that's not that surprising. DC finally got back in the win column. They were kind of struggling recently, and they beat St. Louis, who I thought was the second best team, but now I'm not sure. Tiamu only had an okay game. They benched Cardell Jones, so that was interesting. And Tyree Jackson didn't really do all that much, but they ran the ball really well. Presley had over 100 yards. So yeah, there's that. And then the LA Tampa game was high scoring. Jesus, 41-34. My boy Josh Johnson putting on the show. Almost 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. My boy Saeed, shout out Penn State, had another touchdown. He had a touchdown last week too, I believe. McBride still doing his thing for Tampa. Who had a big game? Tyler and Horn. So yeah. So now if we could go back and check the standings here in the XFL through week 5. In the East, we got DC Defenders 3-2. St. Louis also 3-2. So that was actually a big game. Guardians also 3-2. So the East bracket is kind of tight, and Tampa's 1-4. Unfortunately, though, they haven't played that bad. They're just keep losing games, which is unfortunate for them. And on the West side, Houston is the only undefeated team still in the league. Only team with less than 2 losses, which is kind of crazy. So they're 5-0. Dallas is now 2-3. LA is 2-3, and Seattle's 1-4. So yeah, the West side is definitely not as impressive as the East side is. But hey, 'tis what it 'tis. And that's actually the funny thing. The DC and St. Louis, DC, St. Louis, and New York only win games at home, which is kind of interesting. All of them are undefeated at home, and DC's 0-2, St. Louis is 1-2, and New York is 1-2 on the road. And so clearly that home field advantage matters to some team. Dallas, on the other hand, in the West, is 0-3 at home and 2-0 on the road, which is kind of funny. But yeah, my boy PJ Walker still out here, lead the league in passing yards, in passing touchdowns too, I think. Even though they don't have that on the. Oh no, actually, hold on, I think I can find that. He leads the league in yards, leads the league in touchdowns as well with 15 to Josh Johnson's 11, I think, and he missed the game. No, he played in all the games. I don't remember if did he start the first game? I don't really remember. But yeah, PJ Walker is my MVP. If that's a thing right now. Though I guess it could go to Cam Phillips if you want to. He's got almost 500 yards in 5 games, 455, 9 touchdowns, which is absurd. No one else in the XFL is more than 4. There's 2 guys with 4. Donald Parham, which is the big tight end in Dallas. I believe he's like 6'9" or something. I could see him getting back into the league. And then Trey McBride from LA, who missed it. He was only played in 4 games and he has 4 touchdowns. So yeah, interesting things going on in the XFL. We'll see. Let me look up the schedule for next weekend. So that was week 5. Can I see week 6? Yes, week 6. We got Houston. Where is it? Houston at Guardians, I think. Excuse me. Yeah. So Houston at Guardians, who haven't lost at home yet, but again, Houston's probably the best team. So there's that. St. Louis against Tampa. Tampa's trying to finally get themselves another win. Dallas at DC. That's actually going to be kind of important. I mean, not kind of important, but that'll be an interesting game. This is both these teams can be a little inconsistent. And then LA at Seattle, who both these teams can score some points. So that'll be fun stuff. But yeah, halfway through the season already. And I mean, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still liking the games. I'm still getting the games are, especially this weekend. The games are a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more high scoring. Which obviously, at the end of the day, that's what all these guys. That's what all these people. That's what a lot of people tune in for, is for the points. To see people score some points, get some turnovers, throw on that turnover mask, all that stuff. So, yeah, it's interesting. But what we need to talk about is the end of that Houston-Seattle game, because that was a mess. So, 4th down, Houston, instead of just running a normal play and then the clock and doing what I think Greg McElroy, I'm pretty sure he was calling the game, him and Steve Levy, if I remember correctly. He was saying that they have the play where you kind of just drop back and just have one guy run down the field, you chuck it up, and boom, you throw it out of bounds, game's over, blah, blah, blah. They didn't do that. They took a knee. Which, I mean, is fine if you run out on the clock, but they didn't. Technically, I think they replayed it, and they were there should have been 3 or 2 seconds left on the clock, and the refs were just nah, I didn't see anything, we're good, we're going home. And they just walked out of the arena, guys on the field, talking and discussing and dapping each other up after the game, blah, blah, and all the announcers were hey, look, this game shouldn't be over. And they were 100% right. It should not have been over. He took a knee with at least 2 seconds. If not, and maybe 3. But at least 2 seconds left on the clock. So I'm just ooh, they should have at least had one play. And I think they took a knee at the 20. And especially in a sport like this, if it's the end, if this was the NFL, that never would have happened. One, I mean, those refs wouldn't have made it out of the stadium. But also, if it had happened, all right, it's a 9-point game, 2 seconds left. There's no way the other team could, it's not possible that they could win. There's literally no way possible that they could win. Because I bet you score, get the 2-point conversion, and you lose by 1. It is what it is. There's nothing they can really do. But since it's the XFL and there's a 3-point attempt from the 10-yard line, in theory, the Seattle could have ran a play, scored a touchdown, and then also ran a play, scored a touchdown, and also got the 3-point conversion in order to tie the game up and send it into what I think would have. I don't think there's been an overtime game in the XFL yet. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would have been the first overtime game. Yeah, that would have been the first overtime game of the year in the XFL. So, that would have been interesting. But that didn't happen. And that is a part of the issue. The fact, and again, I will give the XFL credit for this. They did come out swiftly and condemned the refs, which, in fairness, deserves to be done. Deserved to be done. Just because, like, again, they made a grave mistake in that. And again, this isn't like the XFL isn't that big, so there wasn't much to talk about when it comes to this. But this could have been this would have been leading every story. This would have been leading every show. This would have been all people were talking about. This happened in the NFL. 100%. If the game ended like this and the ref just walked off and messed up the time, like it would have been everywhere. And I guess that's kind of what so this is like a good thing they condemned, because again, this is not what you want to be known for. But at the same time, you have to give you kind of have to hope for that at some point that kind of thing will be big enough to where people all over will talk about it, because the fact that very few people are talking about it just shows how much the XFL still needs to grow in terms of viewership. Because, like I said, in theory, that ending should have been everywhere in terms of sports fans. Everyone should have been talking, discussing about how crazy that ending was. And I mean, people did, but also since it was the first game on like the Saturday, so it happened at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and people were out and about enjoying their Saturdays. Most people didn't even see it or even knew about it. And then obviously you're going into today, not everybody checks back on the XFL from the day before, so you might have missed it. But yeah, the fact that happened, again, they condemned the ref. They said, I think he's been placed on like leave, or there's some sort of punishment he's serving, which I give the XFL credit for, because in the NFL they might not have even done that, at least not done it this soon. They probably would have done it after immense backlash from fans and media and stuff. But like immediately after the game, they had already posted a statement saying that, like, yeah, or that same night they had already posted a statement saying, like, yeah, now this kind of stuff can't fly. Like, it can't happen. And then obviously there was some sort of punishment that would be levied down for that ref. That, again, like, how do you not notice that? And not even discuss, like, they didn't even look at nothing. They just walked off the field into the locker room and like, yeah, now we're done for the day. Like, whoa, bro, like, come on. Like, again, if that, like, you gotta at least, like, someone had to catch that. The fact that no one in the crew caught that is kind of absurd, but hey, it is what it is. I'm just saying, like, if I'm a Seattle player, not necessarily a fan, because their fan base is still kind of growing in this league. If I'm a Seattle player and I'm like, yo, we lost, when at least we should have been given a shot. Like, again, maybe they don't get a touchdown, maybe they don't get the 3-point conversion, all that stuff. But you at least got to give them a chance. They didn't even get that chance. And then that's just uncalled for. Like I said, if that happened in the NFL, it would be an uprising, especially because of like all the betting money involved, the players' livelihoods, coaches' livelihoods on the line. Like that stuff would never fly in the NFL. And if like if a great mistake that happened, I mean, it would be front page news everywhere, literally. Like that'd be absurd. But hey, hopefully the XFL can get to that level where one day that'll matter. But also, I forgot to point out that LA game, which I think came on actually kind of late. It happened to start at like 9, so I know a lot of people probably might have missed that one. But highest scoring game in XFL history, I believe. And it was a close game too. Like I said, one possession game, 41-34. And I was able to get the dub. So that was big. I already mentioned that Josh Johnson threw 4 touchdowns in that game. But yeah, Wildcats held on to the highest scoring game. XFL tweeted out, you can view the highlights on their Twitter page. I think they also they're the first team to score 40 points in a game in the season, which is kind of crazy. You thought Houston would have done it already, but they haven't. It's LA. And Josh Johnson, shout out Josh Johnson. But yeah, it seems like Seattle had Tampa had a chance with the ball, but they weren't able to get the score. But yeah, no, so I mean, I guess we'll have to see how the ratings of that late game went. But hey, I mean, at least they had it. Like I'm saying, they're having more competitive games, which is all you can really hope for with this league. Just like make the games need to be interesting in order to keep people invested. And if they have games like that, or they have games that have weird, controversial endings, that'll at least get people to tune in, because hey, it might happen again. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm still going to be locked in halfway through the season. I'm still enjoying it. We'll continue to watch it, see how it all plays out. See who kind of finishes out on top. Though obviously the Houston has a big lead in that, a 2-game lead on the next highest team, a 3-game lead in their own. I guess what's division technically, conference, whatever it is. But yeah, we'll see how that all plays out as the season ends. So coming up next, we'll talk. After this last break, we're going to talk about Draymond's comments about Charles Barkley and how he can't discuss basketball with him, nor can he sit at his table. And why, one, is absurd coming from Draymond, and two, how rings and their level of importance have ruined sports debates and sports discussions and all that stuff. So we'll talk about that right after this break. So stay tuned. That'll be a good one.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Draymond Green apparently heard the criticism he was getting from the TNT crew, most notably, I guess, Charles Barkley, and among other things, he said Charles Barkley should stop before I take his job. I was paraphrasing. He was talking to Golden State Media about the comments, and he said Charles Barkley should stop before I take his job because I can do that well too. You can't talk basketball with me either. Not smart enough, not qualified, no rings, can't sit at this table. And I just have to ask, as a Draymond seems to be a pretty thoughtful, pretty intelligent person when he comes to speak. He usually says, I don't say not usually thinks before he speaks, but he usually says thoughtful things and insightful things and seems to have points, and he's not just saying things for reaction. He seems to actually think things through and mean what he say. And I just have to ask, has he seen himself play? Because if he has, then he, of all people, should not be criticizing the play of Charles Barkley in terms of him not being good enough to sit at the table with him. And I mean, I understand, he gets all those jokes from Shaq because, the no rings, I can't sit at this table joke, blah, 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 whatever. But that's Shaq. Kenny has the rings and he can't make those same comments because he was not nearly as good as Charles Barkley was as a player. But Shaq was, if not better. He was better. So then R said, okay, you can make those comments that you can't sit over here with me, blah, 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 I got all these rings. You don't have that. But the man was on the dream team. I mean, that honestly could stop the argument right there, but I mean, if you want to compare some stats, apparently, I'll please feel free to double check these for me. But if you look at the career stats from Draymond Green, just his career averages, I'm not even going to go season by season, but his career averages. Also, I mean, this has also been a guy who's been using a lot of PTO, if you will, this season. Missing some games because obviously the team's star, so it doesn't really matter if he plays or doesn't play. So I'm playing 43 games this year. But for his career, he averages 9 points. Block a game, was stealing half a game, 5 assists, 7 rebounds, shoots about 70% from the free throw line, 31% from 3, 43% from the field. I'll look up some of his advanced stats. Obviously, that's where he's a little bit better. Okay, this is for the season. Never mind. Basketball Reference is not doing me a favor here. 19.4 value of replacement player, 2.8 average box score plus minus, 2.8 defensive box score plus minus, obviously where he makes a lot of his name. Over the course of his career, he's accumulated 29 defensive win shares, which, if you don't know what those are, or I guess if you don't know what any of that stuff is, defensive win shares are an estimate of a number of wins contributed by a player due to his defense. Win shares are obviously an estimate of a number of players contributed by a player's overall offense and defense combined. Value of replacement player is a box score estimate of the points per 100 team possession that a player contributed above replacement level player, which is -2. Translation to an average team and prorated to an 82 game season multiplied by 2.7 to convert to wins over replacement. Box score plus minus is the box score estimate of 100 points of the points per 100 possessions that player contributed above a league average player. I mean, the offensive defense is just like that, just once for offense, once for defense. So all that stuff. So that's that. And then if you look at my boy Chuck, so good old Charles Barkley, who was again in the Hall of Fame. Draymond probably will get there, but he's not going to get there as easily. For his career, he averaged 22 points, a steal and a half a game as well, only 0.8 blocks, 3.9 assists, almost 12 rebounds a game, shot 73% from the free throw line. From three wasn't good, but obviously he didn't need a three as much back then. 54% from the field, and he did that all at 6'6". And Draymond, they're basically the same size. I mean, Chuck was actually a little bit heavier. 11-time All-Star. Draymond's only a 3-time All-Star. Obviously, he's won the championships, all that fun stuff, blah, blah, blah. Some of his advanced stats. Obviously, he's played longer, so he's got a high value of replacement player. His average box score plus minus is higher. He's at 6.1. Draymond is at 2.8. Went back. Didn't mean to do that. This is being slow. Win shares, he's obviously higher. His stuff is more offensive than defensive, but his win shares are obviously higher because he's played longer. His average PER is 24.6, where Draymond's is 15.1, and PER is the player efficiency rating, which measures the per minute production standardized such that the league average is 15. So his PER, Draymond's first career, is 15, and obviously Chuck's is a little bit higher. So, moral of the story is Charles Barkley, is a better player over the course of his career than Draymond ever was and ever will be, honestly, at this point. I mean, the man's numbers this season, which is the first year that he's really on a team with no other good players around him, because obviously he's played with Stephen and Clay his entire career, then obviously he had KD for a few seasons. So, I mean, it's easy to have success when you have two top 10, top 15 players in the history of basketball on your team. Another guy, Klay Thompson, who's one of, I would argue, the second best shooter in the history of the game. A great two-way player. And you're the fourth option. And you're the most important guy. You obviously can able to rack up some of those assists. You got Steph, you got Clay, you got KD coming off screens and knock down shooters. And I mean, obviously, not that Chuck played with nobody in his career, but he obviously didn't have the same caliber of players around him that a guy, consistently at least, that Draymond has had for the entirety of his career. So that obviously affected his ability. Also, he's won an MVP, which Draymond hasn't. Obviously, he's won other things. He's won Defense Player of the Year awards. So it's not like he's done nothing. Yeah, it was Defense Player of the Year in 2016, 2017. Made a bunch of all defensive teams. Made an All-NBA second team once, and All-NBA. He made an All-NBA second team in 2015, 2016? Really? That must have been a slow year. Jeez. I can't believe he made second team. KD made second team in 2015, 2016. That's absurd. What did Draymond average that year? I'm sorry, I got a little sidetracked, but so 2015, 2016, he averaged 14, 10, and 7. I mean, the Warriors were really good that year. Was that the 73-9 year? Hold on. Yeah, 73-9 year. All right, but Clay didn't even make a team. He made over Clay just because of defense like that. No, Clay made third, but dang, I mean, at least I know Clay at least got to average like 20, right? He averaged 22 in points, shot 42% from three. Probably had good defense too, so it's not like, dang, that's crazy. I did not know he made second team. That was absurd. I'm sorry. That kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. But yes, he's made second team, All-NBA second team once, made All-NBA third team once, I believe. Like I said, made all defensive first and second team a couple times, which is all stellar. And now if you run through Charles Barkley's accomplishments, we got obviously outside of he's already in the Hall of Fame, which I mean Draymond can only hope for. He won MVP and All-Star Game MVP. I mean that's already something. He was all NBA first or second team, well first, second, or third team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times, including for all NBA first team. Also was all rookie first team. He was all NBA first team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So again, Charles Barkley, clearly a better player than Draymond Green over the course of their careers, bar none. But the fact that the rings allow him to say something as blasphemous as "you can't sit at the same table as me" shows you what the importance of rings has done to sports debates. It's the reason, because I think someone tweeted this out. It was like, imagine if Trent Dilfer was like, Dan Marino can't talk for. I mean, again, I understand why you say that about Chuck, only because like some of the things Chuck says, I'm like, well, okay, that makes no sense. But at the same time, he's still a great player, so you can't disrespect him like that. But imagine if like Trent Dilfer was like, yeah, now Dan Marino can't sit at the same table as me because he didn't win a ring. And that'd be absurd, right? Now, obviously, Trent Dilfer was worse than Draymond Green is as a player. But again, you'd just be like, a guy hasn't won a championship, he can't sit at the same table as me. Like, who are you? And again, it just shows the issue with the rings debate is that the rings have become too important. It's the same reason why KD left OKC, because everybody was going to mock him for not winning a ring over the course of his career, even though he's been the second best player in the league, arguably, depending on how you feel about Steph, for like the last 6+ years. Obviously until this year, because he missed this whole year. But again, people are going to mock him for not winning anything. The reason why they mocked LeBron for so long, and still mock him on his finals, because there's reasons why people will say to this day he's not better than Jordan. Which, I mean, is a definitely argument, so I understand that. But there are many people's minds, he will never be better than Jordan, ever, because of the rings. But then at the same time, they won't call Bill Russell the GOAT when he's got 11. So it's like, which one is it? Like, are rings important or are they not important? Like, are the rings most important things or are they not? Because in some arguments they are. This is like, oh, that's all that matters. But in other arguments, like I'm saying, how many people have Bill Russell in their top fives that were born after, like, 1960? Like, how many people? Like, not that, I don't feel like that many people. Like my parent, like my dad was born in the 60s. I promise you, if I asked him who his top 5 was, Bill Russell's not included. I don't promise you that, because I debate him on Wilt and how like some of Wilt's records are a little aren't as impressive to me, which I will probably discuss on a different show why that is, or a different episode why that is. But my point is that like I don't know if he would have. He maybe will, but I don't think he would have Bill Russell in his top 5 players all time. But when you think about rings, you're like, oh, that's supposed to be all that matters. And I think to a degree it does. Like when you're comparing like elite level players, like when you're comparing like Jordan, LeBron, all right, you can rings can factor in. But when you're talking about guys that were the 3rd or 4th best player on their own team versus a top 50 player all the time, like that's not where we're meeting up. Like at no point ever in their lives or in their careers will Draymond ever be better than Charles Barkley was as a player. At no point ever. I don't care. He could win the next 7 rings after the season. He could have 10. He could retire with 10 rings. It wouldn't matter. He would not be a better player than Charles Barkley was. I'm sorry. So now you're trying to tell me who? Let me think. So now you're telling me J.J. Barea is better than Allen Iverson because he won a ring. That's J.J. Barea and Allen Iverson. Like Allen Iverson can't discuss and sit at the same table with J.J. Barea because he didn't win a ring. Like, do you see how foolish that sounds when you say it out loud? You're just like, oh, you didn't win. Like again, I can say that because Shaq is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, so he can make jokes about that with Charles. And also, I guess I don't know how good of friends they are, but they're like kind of cool. So you can make those kind of jokes. Draymond's not at that level yet where he can make those. Like that's why Kenny doesn't make those same jokes. So he knows I wasn't a better player than Charles Barkley was. So that's not a thing that works in the same way that it works for Shaq, because he was arguably a better player than, and probably was a better player than Charles Barkley was. So he can make those comments. Draymond's not at that level. But yeah, the rings have ruined all sports debates because now not that it shouldn't matter, because again, you played to win the game. Shout out Herm Edwards. But that's not the be-all and end-all. Like, everything can't come down to who had the most rings at the end of their career. Like, obviously, in the NFL, is Tom Brady the GOAT? Yes. Is it solely because he won 6 rings? No. After, once he hit, what was 4? The Seattle one? Yeah, 4 was the Seattle one. You could argue before that he was the GOAT. But after that one, people are like, oh yeah, no, he's tied John Montana, like he's good. And people will still say Peyton Manning's better than Joe Montana, and I think he is as a quarterback. Obviously, did he win as many rings as Joe Montana? No. But is he a better quarterback in terms of playing the position? Yes, 100%, in my personal opinion. Oh, okay, let me not say 100%. Like that sounds a little blasphemous. But in my personal opinion, I think Peyton Manning was a better quarterback on the field than Joe Montana was. But people will debate that just because, Joe Montana won 4 rings, went 4-0, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, that does matter. But at the same time, the people you have around you matters as well. Not to say that Peyton Manning played with nobody, because that's obviously not the case. He's got people that will be in the Hall of Fame on his teams, or are already in the Hall of Fame on his teams. But when you're thrown into the greatest receiver of all time, you got arguably the best coach ever. That doesn't hurt. Let me just put it that way. That doesn't hurt you at all as a player. That's all I'm saying. But hey, the rings have tricked the minds of sports fans and sports debaters to be the most important thing, and that's all that matters at the end of the day in these discussions. And again, should it matter? Yes, to a degree. When you're comparing the top of the top. But overall, if you're just like that shouldn't be like this person has more rings, that means he's better. That doesn't make any sense. Because again, that's not the only thing that matters. Just look up stats, look up personal accolades, look up other things. There's other things that go into a person's career that don't involve just winning a championship. Like Tracy McGrady, great player. Now, was he better than Kobe regardless? R.I.P. Was he better than Kobe regardless? No, probably not. I mean, but though there was a debate there during that time, but obviously in that scenario, the rings kind of helped elevate him. But that's because they were at least at a similar level. Kobe's better than Tracy McGrady, but they're at least on a similar playing field. Draymond and Charles Barkley aren't on a similar playing field. Draymond will have to scratch and claw. I mean, he'll probably get in because the NBA is the easiest Hall of Fame to get into. I mean, basketball, because it's like basketball. It's the easiest Hall of Fame to get into. Not just the NBA, but the basketball and Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. It's the easiest Hall of Fame to get into. So he'll probably get in. But he's not like a surefire lock top 50 player all time that Charles Barkley is, and he never will be. But he can't but Charles Barkley can't sit at the table with him because he don't have no rings. Like, he just copying what Shaq said. Like, come on. Like, Draymond's a smart, insightful guy. Like, that's not the argument you deserve to be making. Shaq, cool. You're not that level of player. But I'm saying that is the problem that I've always had with rings. It's the reason why KD went to the Warriors. It's just because he knew he was going to get mocked and criticized if he didn't win a ring. And he could have won a ring in OKC. That's not to say that, but like, look at like Russ and Harden and CP3. Some of these other guys in this era are going to get put down in all-time rankings because they never won that ring. And I'm like, does that matter to a degree? Yes. Jason Kidd won a ring at the end of his career with Dirk. Like, was he a part of that team? Yes, but it's not the same ring as if he won one with the Nets, where he was like the leading driving force. Like, Dirk was clearly the best player on that team. Jason Kidd was on the team, but he was the best player. Like, does that elevate? Is he now elevated above Chris Paul supremely and forever just because he won that one ring and Chris Paul doesn't have one? Like, not in my opinion, no, but in some people's opinions, yes. And because it's like, at the end of the day, rings is all that matters. Rings is all that matters. And I'm like, there is more to the sport than just winning the rings. Obviously, rings are important because you play to win the game. I get that. But there are more to debates and more to these things than just the rings, in my personal opinion. Rings aren't the be-all and end-all in sports debates. They're not just like, all right, this guy has more rings, that means he was better. That doesn't make any sense. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Some people believe that, but to me, that doesn't make any sense. And also, just like, this is why we see a lot of team hopping. It's why we see a lot of joining up. All that stuff. Just because guys know, in the eyes of many fans, even some players, because I mean, when you got guys like Draymond that are playing, and that they think like that, other players think like that. I don't imagine Charles Barkley physically has a great life, but I imagine he would have liked to have won a ring too. So I get that, but also at the same time, it's not like that shouldn't be a crucial part of the debate when you're talking about players like, oh, this guy won a ring, he didn't, so the guy that didn't win the ring isn't as good. Just because he didn't, like, there's a lot of things that go on in not winning a ring. Like, John Stockton's still great. Karl Malone's still great. Clyde Drexler's still great. There's some people just played at the wrong time. If you played at the time with Magic, Jordan, Kareem, like, you just weren't winning any rings. It is what it is. You played at the time with LeBron, Kobe, Steph, like, you just weren't winning that many rings. It is what it is. Like, there's a lot of great players that don't win rings in all sports. I'm just talking about basketball. This is basketball related, but it's in all sports. There's guys that don't win rings that are great players. Not winning a ring does not make you not a great player, and nor does winning a ring make you a better player than you were. Like, that just means you were on a team that won a championship. That's all it means, in my own personal opinion. But I go on forever about this. Just I hate the fact, the emphasis that rings have been the emphasis that has been placed on rings in this world of society that we're in right now, in terms of sports fandom. But it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know who Draymond thinks he is. Telling Chuck he can't sit at the table with him, because Charles should be saying that to Draymond. They would never be at the same table in anything. So I actually will be interesting to see when Charles comments back on Draymond's comments. So that'd be interesting to compare. But it is what it is. But that'll do it here from me today on another episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast. Now, I want to thank you guys all for listening to me, even though Yajuka isn't here. My voice still isn't as good, isn't 100% right. It's better than it was last episode that you guys heard on Friday, but it's still not where it 100% needs to be. I'm working on it, but hopefully by next episode I'll be better. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. As always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of when we drop our latest stuff. If you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. Be very appreciated. And if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can discuss. You can tell me why Draymond's right and Charles Barkley can't sit at his table. You can tell me why. You can tell me who you think's going to win the MVP, because obviously, like I said, the race getting a little bit tighter. You can tell me who you think the next Nets coach is going to be. All that stuff. We can talk about all of it. Anytime. Anywhere. So, like I said, that'll do it here for me. That has been my time, and until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.